A shape, B chord, pentatonic, and major scale position 5, or A shape, B chord position. Get ready, because it's time to rock and or roll. Here we are in our worksheet where we have the top string on top. That's going to be the low E string or heavy E string, the one closest to the ceiling. The high E string, the skinny string, the one closest to the floor on the bottom. 0 representing the open frets, the one which, if indicated, we would not be putting our finger on, but rather ringing them out as open. Frets 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, the ones that, if indicated, we would be fingering, put our finger down on, if indicated in this case by the orange items down below. We're now looking at the A shape in the B chord position, so we've moved up the A shape. Let's recap it in the open position and then move it up to the same shape for a B. So remember, we're looking at this in the open position. You're going to learn it as an A in the open position because everybody does, but you want to be hearing it in your mind. It's going to be an A shape in the open position. That's the part you don't normally say, but you want to be having in your mind. It's an A shape when in the open position. That way you can still call it an A shape, but you can distinguish it. So when you move it up to this area, you can say it's still an A shape in your mind, but now it's going to be in a B chord. So you want to be able to have the flexibility in your mind to be able to do that. Noting that the open string here is usually the item that we're going to look at to determine that it's going to be an A, meaning that open string ringing out is what helps you determine it's an A. It's not the only A in the chord. There's one down here as well. But this one is useful to know because if you learn the notes on the top 2 strings, you can anchor to that note as you move the shape up, and you can determine then where you are playing as you move the chord up. Also note that if we move on to the B shape here, we of course don't have the open positions here, so we have to adjust our fingering. Just like we said with the C chord, you don't really have to adjust your fingering, meaning you could use this for multiple other reasons. It's not just that you want to play another voicing of a B chord as you move it up here, although that's a very useful tool to have. It's also the case that you can play just basically these 3 notes. You can arpeggiate, and you can also use it just simply to anchor where you are at. So in other words, if you simply played this A the same, meaning putting like your smallest fingers in here, your pinky, your ring, and your middle finger, then you could still just play these 3 strings and that would be fine, but you'd like to be able to look back to this note to be able to see that now you are playing a B chord or notes that are typically in a B chord type of structure. You could do that by indicating here, but you may not have as well a handle on the notes that are on the G string as you could. You may be able to learn faster the top 2 strings, and that means you can kind of look back. Now also note that this shape is really important just for something that's movable for a full, like a nice full note that is kind of a bar chord. So you can learn, this is one of the bar chord kind of positions that will often be learned because it's very useful to be able to move this position up, meaning you could change your fingering, typically pointing here with your pointer finger, and then you could try to basically put your 3 fingers here again, but most people will bar it off with normally you're looking at your ring finger. Some people might use their pinky to bar it off. So you'd basically be playing the B. You might try to mute the string up top or just not strum it. And then you'd be playing these 3 strings. And then this last one is usually going to be muted, so you're not going to be playing that one. That gives you a nice movable, pretty full sound, which is a very common tool to have. So that one, unlike the C chord, where it's a little less common that we might just readjust our finger and we're still going to use it for the positioning, this one is one that is quite common that you're going to want to have in your toolkit to be able to reposition your finger in, but you still want to see it as basically an A shape that you're going to be moving up. And even if you can't get that bar chord down at the start, you don't have to play the full bar chord. Even when you do get the bar chord down, I used to think, well, if I'm going to play this, I have to play the full bar chord here. You don't really have to. You could play it in any other position. You could have any other combination, just like we talked about with the C shape. You could play these 3 strings. You could do some combination basically down here, and you can arpeggiate this area. So don't feel like you're restricted to one type of fingering, although again, that bar chord is a great tool to have in the toolbox. So then if we looked at what's in the B, also note that because the B chord is not quite as accessible in like an open position, this is a very common shape that will be used whenever you need basically a B chord. So it's going to be quite common voicing of the B chord. If we go back on over here and we just look at the key of B, if I just took all the notes starting from B all the way out to B, and we did our whole half thing, we'd say B, whole step to C sharp, whole step to D sharp, and then a half step to E, then a whole step to F sharp, whole step to G sharp, whole step to A sharp, and then the half step back home, resoluting to the B. If we take those notes, then we have those notes down here in the B chord. So the B major scale, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and B. Then we can take a look at the skipping every other note. First, skipping every note 3 notes, which would be D sharp, and then F sharp. And that should be what we are now fingering as we move this up. So we've got the B, we've got the F sharp, B, and then the D sharp, and then another F sharp here. So if you're fingering this along with the song, if you're playing the chords, you'll probably use this whole bar chord for the B. If you're playing along with it, you might arpeggiate. This would be the first place that you would kind of arpeggiate and experiment with different voicings. You could then add the pentatonic. So this would fall into the pentatonic shape, which is this shape here. Notice it's a little bit different than in the open position as we saw last time, because the open position only has those 3 frets that are available. So when you pull it up and you then think about it with the pentatonic shape, you're looking at these 4 frets that are going to be in place, and you got these other 2 items that are going to be in there. Now note that this is going to be position 5. I think of it as basically position 5 because when my home base is in the key of C, major or A minor, then that would be basically the shape down here on position 5. That would be your A chord shape. But you can also think of it as, in essence, an A chord shape. And then you're going to be thinking about the pentatonic shape around it. So if I go over here, we can then scroll down and we could say this shape then, we could see the A chord within it. We can call it an A chord shape, A chord when in position 1. And this would be an A chord shape in the chord of B. So you can name that for the pentatonic scale. You can keep that in your mind as well. You could say, okay, this is the A shape when in the open position. So it's an A shape in the pentatonic scale of B. Now again, that's a little bit of a convolution because there's only 3 notes in the shape of an A shape because you're playing a chord, which is now a B chord. But you can then add the 2 notes around it that are now appearing around it to get to the 5 notes in the pentatonic scale, and that'll be a way that you can kind of anchor yourself, one way that you can see where you are in essence on the fretboard. Now, of course, when you are playing this, you can then play your bar chord. If someone else is playing the bar chord, or if you're playing that bar chord in the song and you want to add some notes to it or experiment with the chord itself, you can add different voicings that might be in the pentatonic scale to see if that works with the harmony you are in. Or you can play along with other songs by arpeggiating first within the actual chord, and then you can expand out, branching out to the pentatonic, which would be the next safest place to go generally. And then, of course, we can expand out to the major scale. So this would be another way that you can kind of think, now we're just adding the 2 other notes, so we still have this A shape here, so you still could call this an A shape. Then you could say when in the open position, an A shape when in the open position, major B chord, major scale. And again, it's kind of a weird thing because you're saying it's a B chord, it's an A shape B chord major scale because the B chord only has 3 notes in it. You're calling it a major scale which has 7, but that's because you're anchoring it. You're saying yes, but this A shape is inside the area where I know my full shape is for the major scale, and then you can add that onto your shape when you're basically trying to finger your positions and learning the fingering, and that will give you some more room. If you're trying to play along with someone else, you could say, okay, I'm just going to arpeggiate when they go to the B. I can expand then to the pentatonic, and then possibly expand to the major. So if we just look at our theory stuff over here, we've got then our progression. These 3, the orange would be our major chord, That would be our chord. And then if we numbered these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and played a song in the key of B, we would have our major song progression, which would be chords that we could pick, which would include the B major, the C sharp minor, the D sharp minor, the E major, the F sharp major, the G minor, the G sharp minor, and then oftentimes they drop the seventh, which would be the diminished. And if you played just the 1, 4, 5, the major chords, then you'd be looking at the B, the E, and the F sharp. If the song was played in the key of B, then again, you could look at this position and you could basically play the position of the chords over the top of it, staying in B. If it was like, say, the 1, 4, 5, you could stay in the key of B, or you can try to move along with the song as it moves from B to E to F. You could try to do so with this same position. We'll talk about changing positions later. You could try to do so with the same position, moving it as it basically moves up. You can move the full position. As long as you can visualize, you can see how the position will move up. That's what we'll be doing later as we go forward. As long as you can visualize when you're moving up that this is going to be the root. That's going to be the root, which if you're doing a bar, you'll be able to see because your index finger will be right on it. You'll be pointing at it. But if you're doing some other variant, if you're working down here or something like that, which is quite common if you're complementing something else that's happening, you could still basically look up here to see that's anchoring you down where you are on the fretboard.